All. So cafe is open. Welcome. I like this. Kelly. Kelly said, even when I can't watch, I pop in to hit the like button. Thank you very much. Likes are awesome. So let's look at a few interesting things for today, and then we'll do our chit chat. So this is drbean.com, of course, and there is a link in the description, and you can buy it. Actually, my team was saying we should change the price. So there is a link. Let's see what happens with that one. Okay, so the first one, I think it is a bit late on FDA side, but still they did something that seems to be correct. That is coronavirus COVID-19 update. FDA limits use of Janssen COVID-19 vaccine to certain individuals. Today, and my wife got this one and she got injured. So here, today the US Food and Drug Administration has limited the authorized use of the Janssen COVID-19 vaccine to individuals 18 years of age and older for whom other authorized or approved COVID-19 vaccines are not accessible or clinically appropriate, and to individuals 18 years of age and older who elect to receive Janssen COVID vaccine because they would otherwise not receive a COVID-19 vaccine. So really what they're saying is, take the other vaccines first. If you cannot take them or you do not want to take them, then take this one. And so why are they saying this? After conducting an updated analysis, evaluation, and investigation of reported cases, the FDA has determined that the risk of thrombosis with thrombocytopenia syndrome, a syndrome of rare and potentially life-threatening blood clots in combination with low levels of blood platelets with onset of symptoms approximately 1 to 2 weeks following administration of the Janssen COVID-19 vaccine, warrants limiting the authorized use of the vaccine. This news was not new. Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, CHAdOx1, had the clotting issue. That was also an adenovirus-based vaccine. Now that it's given, now that we have majority of the population vaccinated or had infection and recovered, this is what I had thought as well, that the healthcare authorities are kind of looking at it this way: give it to everyone. This is my opinion. Give it to everyone, and we'll see it later afterwards. So I think this is an afterwards reaction to now say, all right, we know this is happening. Let's just now limit this. Well, anyways, still a good thing. The FDA has determined that the known and potential benefits of the vaccine for the prevention of COVID-19 outweigh the known and potential risks of individual 18 years of age and older. See, they've changed the verbiage to known and potential, for whom other authorized or approved COVID-19 vaccines are not accessible or clinically appropriate, and for individuals 18 years of age and older who elect to receive the Janssen COVID-19 vaccine because they would otherwise not receive a vaccine. If I was there, I would just stop this vaccine. So the fact sheet is here. They say that now reflects the revision of the authorized use of Janssen COVID-19 vaccine, including a warning statement at the beginning of the fact sheet. Let's look at it. So here, do you think that they just found out? They just, after 2 years, they did some analysis and now it became clear? It needed to be 2 years worth of data for them to know. Warning: thrombosis with thrombocytopenia syndrome. This still is not all that is happening with this vaccine. See full EUA prescribing information. So that's that. Then they say, we recognize that the Janssen COVID-19 vaccine still has a role in the current pandemic response in the US and across the globe. Anyway, so that's FDA. Still, they did a good thing. A little late. Okay, so that's one. This is a totally different leaning of a study. This study, Omicron as severe as other COVID variants, large US study. This is very interesting because we have been looking at UK data where they have been saying that the hospitalizations and such cases are lesser. This study says it's still in preprint, it is still being reviewed and approved, and so it would reach that point. It's a large study, it is from the Massachusetts. I believe it is in the Mass General Hospital. Um, The study, which is undergoing peer review at Nature Portfolio, was posted on Research Square on May 2. The authors from Mass General Hospital, Minerva University, and Harvard Medical School declined to comment until peer review is completed. So, in the study, they say Omicron is actually as dangerous as previous variants. It is just that it came against those who were vaccinated. Because of that, it could not do much. That is the gist of it. So, of course, then the conclusion is go get more vaccines. So we found that the risks of hospitalization and mortality were nearly identical. Between the Omicron era and times in the past 2 years when different variants were dominant, the researchers said in their report. The new study, based on records of 130,000 COVID patients in Massachusetts, is unique and pretty strong, said Dr. Arjun Venkatesh of Yale School of Medicine and Yale Center of Outcomes Research and Evaluation, who was not involved in the research. Rather than just looking at numbers of deaths and hospitalizations, as earlier studies have done, it accounted for patients' vaccination status and medical risk factors and compared similar groups of people. That's actually going to be a very interesting set of data points to look at. And this is what was interesting. I think that these data points were available, and I think there was an intentional way to not disclose them. As we looked at that article as well from FDA, their spokesperson had said that if we released all the data, that would have caused hesitancy. So the author cited potential limitations in their report, including the possibility that the analysis underestimated the number of vaccinated patients in more recent COVID waves and the total number of infections because it excluded patients who performed at-home rapid tests. So anyways, so we'll go over this study as well. It's interesting. Barbara says, I agree with Dr. Bean. So John Snyder says, basically Omicron is mild if you're recovered or vaccinated. Yeah, so natural infection and the recovery from that is also, it means something. Madame Madima Rose says, that sounds like rubbish. So I was, so tell you something that would make you smile. I watched a video. I do not know how that video popped up in my YouTube suggestions. And the video said, what expressions, English expressions and words not to speak in British English. And in that, the presenter was saying, do not use garbage. We don't use garbage in UK or Britain. We use rubbish. Garbage is not the correct term. What else she was upset about? She was actually quite strong about her messaging. She said, Americans use this expression of I got it or I got this to say that I've gotten control over this and I'll handle it. She said that is an ugly expression. I actually then went and looked at the comments and people were upset about her saying this was an ugly expression. She said that is an ugly expression. What you should say is I can handle it or something like that. And I understand I got this is grammatically incorrect. So either you say I've gotten it, which then loses the expression itself. So So that was the commentary. What else was she upset about? She was upset about booty, the word booty. She said it's such an ugly expression and it's such a sexual expression that I cannot even say it. And Americans use it, but it actually means the loot, that is what booty is and not the sexual thing. And so she said, don't use it. And she had a couple of more words. Saraswati says, I understand. I got you, Dr. Bean. Yes, we do this all the time over here. Nipa says, Elon Musk just bought YouTube. Yeah, that'll be fun. Yes, Alexander says, my old British car has a bonnet, not a hood. Also a boot instead of a trunk. Yes. So Guitar Doc Beer says, JnJ is much safer than Pfizer as long as you have them aspirate first to be sure they are not in blood vessels. Check out how bad is my batch. Jim says, why does Pfizer want to wait 75 years before? So we discussed this, Jim. There were so many things wrong with all that. Although their reasoning to the court was, we only have 10 people that are the team that handles Freedom of Information Act inquiries. And they said they are already overwhelmed. And now you're asking us to go over, 300,000 pages or so? I don't know, a large number of pages. So we do not have the capacity to do it. And so we can do, I think they said a small number, I don't know, 500 per month or something. And they said, with that, we will be able to release them all in 75 years' time. And so then the court came back and said, not at all. And I actually read what court had said. I loved that decision. And they said, no, you would do 50,000 pages per month. And then it was interesting that CDC and FDA actually did not have the documents. The documents were still with Pfizer. Pfizer had created a summary and sent it to CDC and FDA, which were used as a basis to approve or authorize the vaccines. So when the time came to actually look at the right data, they didn't have the data. And that surprised me. Here is why. Imagine if I was running the CDC, I would have said to my team was, fine, we got the summary, ask them to send the whole document as well, this set for our archival purposes, number one, and number two, do spot tests. If you cannot look at 300,000 documents because you use the company's workforce to help with that, then do spot tests. Maybe check 1,000 of the cases and see if they match up. And for our own records, we should have the data with us. So the company can never go back and change the data or manipulate it. And it turned out that the data and the pages were not with CDC or FDA. They were actually still with the company. So then the Pfizer came in and said, well, there are business secrets in there. And I loved the judge's response. His response was, start releasing the papers. And whenever you have a concern, for that specific concern, come to me and tell me what is your concern, and we'll go case by case. Instead of saying, okay, fine, don't do it, or slow down. He said, start. So that was funny. So John says they're using file drop and there's a limit on how large of an upload can be. That's, John, I'm a software engineer as well. We can, there are so many ways to upload large files. These can be segmented, uploaded, reconstructed. There are many ways. There are actually, just like torrents, there are services that can segment the pieces, put them out, then reconstruct them as well. So Victor says, and do you think that adolescent hepatitis is related to autoimmune hepatitis talked about in that in vivo study you discussed a while back? So far, they're saying it is the adenovirus that is being identified as the virus. If it is adenovirus, and the theory that they have, so far I like that theory. The theory was, and that is not US theory, that was, I believe, um, UK's theory. The theory was that these children who were too young and had spent majority of their life in the pandemic and did not have interaction with others and had not been exposed to the adenovirus types, now they are getting adenovirus acting as more lethal to them. Then they said it is possible that the virus has become lethal. There's a variant that is lethal. Or they said there may be some other reason. I am still not able to wrap my head around this when people say this, and I'm not convinced that there is a message going around that all those children that have hepatitis, their mothers were breastfeeding them and their mothers were vaccinated. That just does not make sense to me. Spikes do not cross in the blood. Instead, the IgA will cross, which would be protective. I said blood. I meant milk. And then there is some other such thing going on as well, that somehow the vaccine is causing some sort of immune issue, and that is doing this. But these children were not vaccinated. But this is still an interesting area to look at to see what the heck is happening, because children they're dying as well. Their liver transplants are occurring. It's a tragedy. Hey, Roller Girl, how are you? Victor says, nice to meet you virtually. By the way, thank you very much, Victor. Nice to meet you as well. Frank says, file size is limited by Windows updates. Um, so, Frank, you have the word computer with you as well. Um, it's actually very easy to handle the file size, and one can actually break down the larger files into smaller as well. There are many ways. So this is a interesting question. Hi, Dr. Bean. I have too many questions to list about your shows. Okay, I hope good thing. One of my main questions is, are exosomes acting essentially as synthetic viruses via shedding? So the question is, can exosome shed? And the writing that I did on Substack, me and my team, we did say that exosome can be found in sweat. Now, can these exosomes with the spike on them be found in the sweat and then on the surface? That's not known. It is actually a very interesting thing to do. And all this will mean is to have a study, and there are many, many research labs that can do sequences for or identification for spikes, to take somebody's sweat who may have been vaccinated or may have had an infection, and then take that sweat and see if there are spikes in it or not. That is the only curiosity. That's the only question I have. Now, if we do not talk about exosome outside, if we just talk about exosome within the body of the person who was vaccinated, or I'm sure that infected, this is the discussion that those researchers did. They said this exosome that comes out with the spikes on it then circulates in the blood, and it goes to the spleen. Over there, macrophages pick it up, and then the immune training occurs. And they said we picked up those exosomes and brought them to mice, and mice developed the antibody responses. So they act like vaccines. like Novavax type vaccine or Medicago like vaccine. So to, if I understand your question, one of my main question is, are exosomes acting essentially as synthetic viruses via shedding? So I do not know if they're shedding. I don't think that the exosome will be found in the breathing, but the maximum possibility is that they may be in sweat. So if they are coming out of our body, then they are just carrying spike. And so that means they're not replicatable. They may just be spikes, and that could help. I do not know. It's a good question, though. This is an interesting question. Melatonin taken long term suppresses insulin release in the morning. I did not know this. So there are two mechanisms. One mechanism is called dawn effect, and the other one is called Samogai effect. These effects are related to our circadian rhythms, and they change the insulin levels in the morning time. This is why normally in a healthy person, between 6 to 7, I think that is the normal time, and that window can be different for everyone. If you check your sugar levels, they would appear higher, and that is a normal function. That's a dawn effect. And the circadian rhythm is controlled by melatonin production from the pineal gland. So if you're taking melatonin separately, then it is possible that the circadian rhythm may change, which will then mean that the normal increase in sugar level may change, the window might change. That is all I can correlate from a mechanism point of view. So now I'm going to do a search on your behalf to see that if it is correct. So insulin suppresses insulin release. And that suppression of the release is for sure dawn effect. So if I go here, dawn effect. Dawn phenomena, also called dawn effect, is a term used to describe the abnormal early morning increase in blood sugar, usually between 2 a.m. and 8 a.m. in the people with diabetes. And similarly, there is another called Samogai. Samogai Samugai effect. The Samugai effect or phenomena happens when you take insulin before the bed and wake up with high blood sugar levels. So that's a separate theory. Now, melatonin causes increase, suppresses reduced insulin. Researchers have discovered that increasing levels of the sleep hormone melatonin reduces the ability of insulin producing cells to release insulin. So let's see this. Also, they found the effect is stronger in people who carry a particular gene variant that is linked to higher risk for type 2 diabetes. The finding marked the culmination of work that goes back to 2009. I need to actually read the study itself. In the new study, the researchers worked with lab cultured beta cells. Okay, so this is in vitro level of by reducing the amount of insulin. Okay, so this is an in vitro and in vivo mouse study. The team demonstrated that a gene variant carried, okay, in this last part, where is the, after 3 months of melatonin treatment, all participants had higher levels of blood sugar. However, they were especially higher in the carriers of the risk gene. I need to read this study. This is what I really do not like. These sites that do not refer to the study itself. I always link all the studies in my descriptions. Is this the one? The role of melatonin in diabetes therapeutic implications. Melatonin, referred to as the hormone of darkness, is mainly secreted by pancreas level being. The effect of melatonin and insulin secretions are mediated through the melatonin receptors. It decreases insulin secretion by inhibiting cyclic AMP and cyclic GMP pathways. So I think it's the same circadian rhythm, like it decreases this. Okay, so it decreases insulin secretion by inhibiting cyclic AMP and GMP pathways, but activates the phospholipase CYP3 pathway, inositol triphosphate pathway, which mobilizes calcium for organelle and subsequently increases insulin secretion. Okay, so it has an immediate depressive effect, but then it also activates phospholipase pathway, which creates calcium which moves calcium inside the cell, which would cause organelle to do their release, and that would increase the secretion. So both in vivo and in vitro, insulin secretion by the pancreatic islets in circadian manner, see, I knew what they're talking about, circadian rhythm, is due to the melatonin action on the melatonin receptors, inducing a phase shift in the cells. Okay, so it's really more of a phase shift than suppression. Phase shift, what are they talking about is this. So let's say here is a cell. And this cell has beautiful eyes. Okay, so here we have a cell. This is, I sometimes think that these cells are going to unionize and go to the whoever they can and say, you need to stop Dr. Mubin from creating eyes. Okay, so let's say the melatonin acts here. They're saying that the immediate action results in reduction in cyclic AMP, reduction or increase by inhibiting cyclic AMP and GMP pathways. So it's not reduction, but inhibition. So cyclic AMP pathway and cyclic GMP pathways are inhibited. When these are inhibited, insulin release is reduced. But at the same time, in the cell membrane, there is inositol triphosphate pathways or IP3 pathways, which when become activated, they would cause calcium to move in. Calcium's job, calcium's has lots of fun things. For example, our muscle movement needs calcium. For example, our neurotransmission or the signal transmission in the nerves need calcium. Similarly, when we have a inflammation going on and we need to fix the tissue, damaged tissue, we can fill it with calcium like cement. And similarly, calcium is also important that when it is inside the cell, it can help organelle. Organelle are small things in the cell. It can help them be tracted, brought, pulled to the cell membrane, and then their content released. I call calcium tractors of the vesicles. So I always visualize it that here is a vesicle, let's say it's filled with insulin, and here the calcium comes in, and calcium doesn't do the direct traction, but it causes other proteins to become activated that are going to pull this, and then these are going to move it near the cell membrane where it would open up and the things would go out. So then insulin will be released. So the only thing is there is a phase difference between them. That is immediate suppression and then a little later release. So if you increase the melatonin, this phase shift might occur. So then melatonin may be involved in the genesis of diabetes as a reduction in melatonin levels, and a functional interrelationship between melatonin and insulin was observed in diabetic patients. So in diabetic patients, he's saying that melatonin was found to be less. Evidence from experimental studies prove that melatonin induces production of insulin growth factor and promotes insulin receptor tyrosine. Okay, so this is a totally different study. It says melatonin helps. So we'll have to see more, but I understand the mechanism here. So Svetlana, I may have to do more research on this one. This is a very good question. I don't think that melatonin would cause suppression, which is permanent like suppression. It may be a phase shift. I like this term here. Critical thought says objection, conjecture. Absolutely. Mochi donuts for the win. Absolutely. Do you have the black seed donut? That will be interesting. Is this true? Casey says, I read that the long term use of turmeric can cause reduced ferritin levels. Is this true? So I'll have to look at that as well. So, long term use of turmeric. And what did you say? Ferritin level? Ferritin levels. It may be high dose, but not long term. The reason is that we take turmeric our whole life. Iron deficiency anemia due to high dose turmeric. So when is it? This was 2019 January, so rather recent. Turmeric is increasingly studied as an anti-inflammatory and anti-neoplastic agent. It binds to ferric iron in the gut and causes iron deficiency in mice. We report here a possible case of iron deficiency anemia in human taking turmeric. So 66-year-old physician treated himself for an osteo for an osteoarthritis flare after steroids with 6 turmeric extract six capsules daily to help with inflammation. During this time, his hemoglobin never rose above 12 and his iron and ferritin levels were consistent with iron deficiency. Upper and lower endoscopy and hemoccult studies were negative, meaning he was not bleeding. 2 weeks after stopping the turmeric and continuing his usual iron supplement, his hemoglobin had returned to normal. With normalizing iron studies, turmeric was associated with significant iron deficiency anemia, consistent with the binding of available iron in the gut and the prevention of absorption. That is a lot of capsules. 6 turmeric extracts, 538 milligram daily. So this may be the first case of documented iron deficiency anemia in people due to turmeric supplements. This is not really correct way to put it. I would say in people with the over administration of the turmeric supplement. Given the widespread use of turmeric and curcumin supplement across many illnesses, further attention is warranted. Yeah, sure. Don't take 6 capsules. James says 530 milligram. Wow. Can you imagine? This is what is interesting for me. They say it here. So it's not that you can say, hey, you guys are cheating, because they say after uh, 6 turmeric extract capsules. So they say it. But then down here, instead of saying don't take so much turmeric, they simply said iron deficiency anemia in people due to turmeric supplements. And so all of a sudden they generalized it. That I think is the wrong thing to do. This could make sense that it can be used for the hemochromatosis. Yep. Because it is binding with the iron. Robin says, I don't eat sugar any longer, but mochi donuts are delish. They're good, yes. Lisu says, husband has Manuka honey jar on his desk, waiting for Mrs. Bean's demo, won't trust me to apply it. So I don't think that she's ever going to demo it. She would just not. I have been asking her to at least talk about it. But she dips that thing and applies it just here. Like the way she says me to me is that this is like women when they apply liner on the outside. But I still want to invite her. So I'm going to give her a heads up that next week she should once again tell us. Manuka honey is awesome. Susan says, I've found a mochi donut shop, but haven't tried it. Parth says, hello, sir. Are you inactive in Instagram? I don't look at Instagram. My team probably looks at it. I just don't have time to look at so many um, social media platforms. And not only this, everywhere I go, people start debating with me. You said this, how about that? Um, so these discussions here is what I can manage every day, but I cannot manage discussions and debates across the platforms. So I just keep myself focused. My biggest time is even today, this discussion that I did. I started it at 12 and I was done by about 5. So my biggest time is to actually preparing and drawing for you all. So then I get less time to uh, discuss things as well. So no wonder he didn't comment on my tawdry DMs. Did you DM on uh, what is that? Discord? I very rarely go to Discord and then I look at some DMs, but there are so many DMs. Sorry. Paul says, we appreciate all your time and effort. Thank you very much. And Paul, we need you actually. So, in the context of this Omicron being more or less severe, I think we should look at unvaccinated, uninfected, and Omicron and the stats. That will be interesting to see. Svetlana says, thank you. My mom's insulin went down and glucose up after we added melatonin for her. She is pre diabetic, probably has the wrong genes. No, so it also depends when are you checking, because as you saw that they said there is a phase shift, so it is possible that the circadian rhythm changes. I would recommend that number 1, keep melatonin within the normal ranges. Number 2, check glucose at different times. My DMs, there are, I feel bad. There are hundreds and thousands of DMs across Discord, um, Patreon, Twitter I have less. Um, Emails, voice messages. I wish I could do justice to all of that. It's not that there are fewer people, maybe lesser than 5%, who are just upset and they want to um, totally hurt me. But majority have questions and they have reasonable things to ask, and I just don't have enough time. And number 2, I usually avoid those where there is a medical advice because I cannot give a medical advice. So tomorrow is also a very interesting one. Tomorrow I'm going to talk about long COVID, tachycardia, myocarditis, even with the vaccine and COVID, and the role of suprarenal glands and acetylcholine. John Snyder says, I can't understand why he took 6 pills of turmeric. Correct. But can you understand why the researchers wrote it this way? They actually told you how much he took, but then they generalized it over here. See, given the widespread use of the turmeric, well, turmeric is used and curcumin is used in food forever. Mm. Les Smith says, how to bow out, night all. Good night. Casey says, thank you. You're very welcome. Alicia says, you're the star of your show. Thank you very much. Oh, Meeple Art is here. Hey, Meeple Art. Are the owls around this evening? I'm missing my owl that flew away. Oh, man. Yes, Texas had owl. How is the owl, Texas? Is he or she still there? Or they, depending upon the pronoun the owl prefers. Alexander says, 66-year-old, six pills. He likes the word six. This is a good question. Let's see. How long did he take it? A 66-year-old physician. So that's the abstract. Let's see. Case presentation. Change in hemoglobin. So he started here um, somewhere between 6/3/2018 to 7/3 here. Let's say, I do not know exactly how should I. So maybe near the end of 6th month, and he continued till, oh man, he continued till December. So almost 6 months of taking six capsule. So who said that he liked six? So 66 years old, 6 months of turmeric, six capsule daily. That was a lot of turmeric. Change in ferritin and irons. So 8 to 12. So lots of. Wouldn't he have known after 2 to 3 weeks? Well, it depends. Deficiency may not appear right away, or deficiency may not create an impact, especially for men right away. 6 months of six capsule daily. But hey, he tried it. Frank Computer says, I think he meant a Netflix marathon. Yes. Decline in marathon times. So this is a good question, that if exosomes are in sweat, won't they are also in the breast? So the breast milk, the question is, this is a question that can an exosome actually be present? Now, let me explain something. What we are talking about is the following. Wherever there is secretion system, that system is usually built like this. There is a tube that is blind end, and then there is an open end. Inside are the cells that are lining this tube. This is a tube, not a two-dimensional thing. Imagine if this is a glass. The glass looks like this. It looks like this. This is the glass. Now, on the inside of the glass, there are cells that are lining it. Now, the secretory cells have a very interesting behavior. What they do is the following. Here is a cell. I'm going to make one cell. Usually, they are pyramidal shaped cell, or they are this kind of a shape. And here is a I'm intentionally trying to make a three-dimensional representation because I'll explain why. So imagine this is a three-dimensional representation of a cell. Here is the nucleus in the cell. Now, when the cell is going to secrete something, let's say sweat or milk, usually a little packet of, although sweat doesn't do this, but milk would do it, a small packet of this excretion, the secretion is formed, then it is brought near the pyramid's tip, and then it kind of merges here, and that is how secretion occurs. So all the cell here will do this. They'll make the milk or sweat, and then that would actually be released from their tip into this space. And from there, we can actually do some exchange of molecules and ions to make it concentrated or not, and blah, whatever, absorb water back and so on. And then whatever that fluid is, that is released. Now, when we talk about the exosomes, most of those exosomes we are talking about are in the blood. Now, what we are saying is that the exosome with the spikes on it has to cross the blood vessel, come out in this interstitial tissue, then cross into the cell, then cross here, and then go through the system outside. So the question is, can this happen? All of this. Can an exosome from the blood enter milk making apparatus, then in their cells, and from there come out on the other side of the cell and then go out? So let's see. Now, if an exosome is produced within the cell to get out, which is the basic thing, the exosomes are produced within the cell. This is why they're called exosome. They are made in the cell and then they exit. If that is the case, then you would see that if there is an exosome in the blood, this exosome has spikes on it. This exosome came from some cell that was vaccinated, and that cell exited this exosome. If this cell, let's say this is a sweat cell or a milk cell, if this has to release an exosome, it is going to make that exosome inside and then release it. The question is, can a cell pick up a wandering exosome from outside, eat it up, then regurgitate it on the other side intact? That's an interesting question. I'm going to try to see if that is possible. Can an exosome be picked up by another cell? So we know that exosomes can actually merge into the other cells, but then they would lose their consistency. So here we have, this is 2013, older one, transfer of extracellular vesicles during immune cell to cell interactions. So here they're talking about two cell to cell interaction. The transfers of molecules between cells during cognate immune cell interactions has been reported. Recently a novel mechanism of transfer of proteins and genetic materials such as small RNA between T cell and APCs has been described. Okay, so this may not be what we are looking for. Involving exchange of extracellular vesicles. So what they're saying is, when T cell and the macrophages are interacting, remember the macrophage, that is the antigen presenting cell, and here is a T cell, and they are interacting anyways. So he's saying during this, it is possible that the exosome comes out from here and goes to this cell. So that is interesting. The question is, can now the same exosome intact come out on the other side? This I don't think is going to happen. A term that in exosomes and macro have been implicated. So this would not talk about this. What are exosomes? Exosome, microRNA. Important cell releases, subpopulation exhibit distinct. So they can do cell to cell communication. The only way I can think of doing this, so let's say we just want to do it, that will be this. Exosome present in the blood. Let's say this is a milk making cell. Exosome somehow enters this cell. Now, this is not an easy thing for exosomes to just enter the cell. The entering here, because these cells are specifically receptive, but let's say it enters the cell. When it enters the cell, it's going to break up. And then if, let's say, it had spikes on it, those spikes are going to be released in the cell. Then these spikes should load on another vesicle that is being formed here and then be released. That's the only possibility, at least as far as I understand and know. But could this guy enter here and just keep going out on the other side? That will be a very interesting question to answer. Colombian coffee bean, I don't think I can find an answer right away. So KB Usenits says, are we drawing this week? How about we do that tomorrow? What do you think? Should we do the drawing tomorrow? I love doing the drawing, as you know. So, and we are almost at 8 o'clock as well. What is this? Bay Area Aquarius says, wrong toothpaste. Cool. So, this is true. Who said erasing? So Sita says drawing tomorrow. Okay, so we'll do that. And Paul says erasing more important than drawing. Absolutely. The Frank Computer says, how do you get almond milk? Yeah, so that is a funny thing. Is there a thing called almond milk? And how do you milk them? Okay, so with this, thank you very much. My customary message: like, subscribe, and share. And if you would like to support this work, there are links in the description to buy Dr. Bean Premium Access. These are about 1,000 videos for a very low price. Or you could use Buy Me a Coffee or PayPal or become a Substack member or Patreon. Thank you very much, and I'll see you tomorrow.